Question 1. A community pharmacy needs to order a supply of oxycodone/acetaminophen. Which DEA form must be used to document this transaction? A. DEA Form 41. B. DEA Form 106. C. DEA Form 222. D. DEA Form 224. Answer: C. DEA Form 222. This question tests your knowledge of DEA forms for controlled substance handling, specifically focusing on the keyword order. The correct DEA Form 222 is required for any order, distribution, or transfer of Schedule 1 or 2 controlled substances between DEA registrants. Since oxycodone is a Schedule 2 substance, the pharmacy must use this triplicate, or its electronic equivalent, form to procure it from a supplier. Think of it as the official purchase order for the most restricted drugs available for medical use. Question 2. Under the Combat Methamphetamine Epidemic Act of 2005, CMEA, what is the maximum amount of pseudoephedrine that a patient can purchase in a single day? A. 3.6 grams. B. 7.5 grams. C. 9 grams. D. 5 grams. Answer: A. 3.6 grams. This question assesses knowledge of federal limits on pseudoephedrine sales, a key component of the Combat Methamphetamine Epidemic Act. The keyword clue is single day, which points to the daily limit rather than the monthly one. Federal law restricts the sale of pseudoephedrine to 3.6 grams per person per day, regardless of the number of transactions. For example, a customer cannot buy 2 grams in the morning and another 2 grams in the evening from the same or different stores. Remember to distinguish the daily limit, 3.6 grams, from the 30-day limit, 9 grams. Question 3. Which of the following amendments or acts was the first to require that manufacturers prove a drug is not only safe but also effective for its intended use? A. Durham-Humphrey Amendment. B. Kefauver-Harris Amendment. C. Pure Food and Drug Act. D. Orphan Drug Act. Answer: B. Kefauver-Harris Amendment. This question tests the historical evolution of drug regulation, focusing on the concept of effective. While earlier laws required drugs to be safe, the Kefauver-Harris Amendment of 1962 was a direct response to the thalidomide tragedy and added the critical requirement for efficacy. Manufacturers now had to submit evidence from clinical trials demonstrating that their drug actually works for the condition it claims to treat. An easy way to remember this is that Kefauver-Harris added the E for effectiveness to drug approval requirements. Question 4. A pharmacist receives a prescription for a Schedule III medication with 5 refills indicated. According to federal law, this prescription is valid for how long from the date it was written? A. 3 months. B. 6 months. C. 1 year. D. Indefinitely until refills are used. Answer: B. 6 months. The question evaluates your understanding of expiration dates for controlled substance prescriptions, specifically for Schedule III medications. Federal law states that prescriptions for Schedule III and IV controlled substances expire 6 months after the date of issue. Even though the prescriber authorized 5 refills, the patient cannot obtain any of those refills after the 6-month mark has passed. Keep this rule in mind: for C3 and C4 drugs, it's a maximum of 5 refills within a 6-month window, whichever comes first. Question 5. The primary purpose of the Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act, HIPAA, is to A. Mandate that pharmacists offer counseling to all patients. B. Regulate the sale of over-the-counter medications. C. Protect the confidentiality of patient health information. D. Classify drugs into different schedules based on abuse potential. Answer: C. Protect the confidentiality of patient health information. This question targets the core function of HIPAA, a foundational law in healthcare. The primary purpose is to safeguard protected health information, PHI, which includes anything that can identify a patient, from unauthorized disclosure. This means pharmacy staff cannot discuss a patient's medications or health conditions in public areas or with individuals not involved in their care. The key takeaway is that HIPAA is all about patient privacy and data security. Question 6. A pharmacy discovers a significant shortage of a controlled substance during a routine inventory count. Which DEA form must be completed and submitted to report this event? A. DEA Form 222. B. DEA Form 41. C. DEA Form 224. D. DEA Form 106. Answer: D. DEA Form 106. This question assesses knowledge of the proper procedure for reporting a significant shortage or loss of controlled substances. DEA Form 106, the report of theft or loss of controlled substances, is the official document used to notify the DEA of such an incident. This is different from Form 41, which is for destruction, or Form 222, which is for ordering. For example, if a bottle of 100 hydrocodone tablets is missing and cannot be accounted for, the pharmacy must investigate and file a Form 106. Question 7. According to the Poison Prevention Packaging Act, PPPA, a pharmacist may dispense a prescription medication in a non-child-resistant container only if A. The medication is for a geriatric patient. B. The prescriber requests it for all their patients. C. The patient or prescriber makes a specific request for a single prescription or the patient provides a blanket waiver. D. The medication is a liquid formulation. Answer: C. The patient or prescriber makes a specific request for a single prescription or the patient provides a blanket waiver. The question tests the exceptions to the Poison Prevention Packaging Act, PPPA, whose default is to use child-resistant containers. The key here is understanding who can authorize an exception and how. A patient can request easy open caps for all of their prescriptions, a blanket waiver, or just one at a time, and a prescriber can request it for a single prescription but cannot issue a blanket waiver for all their patients. While many geriatric patients may request this, their age alone does not automatically grant an exception. A specific request must still be made. Question 8. A patient presents a prescription for Ambien, Zaleplon, a Schedule IV drug. The prescription was written on January 15 with 2 refills. According to federal law, how many times can this prescription be transferred to another pharmacy if the 2 pharmacies do not share a real-time, online database? A. 0 times. B. 1 time. C. 2 times. D. As many times as there are refills. Answer: B. 1 time. This question tests the specific rules for transferring a controlled substance prescription. The crucial information is that it is a Schedule IV drug and the pharmacies do not share a common database. Federal law permits the transfer of original prescription information for a C3, 4, or V substance for the purpose of refill dispensing on a one-time basis only. For example, if a patient gets their first fill at Pharmacy A and then wants to get a refill at Pharmacy B, the prescription can be transferred once. Question 9. Which federal law established the 2 classes of drugs, prescription, legend, and over-the-counter? A. Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Act of 1938. B. Kefauver-Harris Amendment of 1962. C. Durham-Humphrey Amendment of 1951. D. Prescription Drug Marketing Act of 1987. Answer: C. Durham-Humphrey Amendment of 1951. This question is about identifying the landmark legislation that created the distinction between prescription and over-the-counter drugs. The Durham-Humphrey Amendment is responsible for this fundamental separation in pharmacy practice. It established that certain drugs, which could be habit-forming or unsafe without medical supervision, require a prescription and must bear the Rx-only legend. Remember this amendment as the law that drew the line between drugs a patient can buy freely and those needing a doctor's order. Question 10. The Omnibus Budget Reconciliation Act of 1990, OBRA 90, placed a federal mandate on states to require pharmacists to perform which of the following for Medicaid patients? A. Verify the patient's insurance coverage before dispensing. B. Offer to counsel patients about their medications. C. Check the DEA number of every prescriber. D. Substitute generic drugs whenever possible. Answer: B. Offer to counsel patients about their medications. The question focuses on the main impact of OBRA 90 on pharmacy practice. While all the options are common pharmacy activities, OBRA 90 specifically mandated that pharmacists must offer to counsel Medicaid recipients to ensure they understand their medication. This includes discussing the drug's name, intended use, common side effects, and proper administration. Although most states have since expanded this counseling requirement to all patients, the law's origin is tied to improving outcomes for the Medicaid population. Question 11. Which classification of a drug recall is issued for a product that may cause temporary or medically reversible adverse health consequences? A. Class 1. B. Class 2. C. Class 3. D. Class 4. Answer: B. Class 2. This question tests your ability to differentiate between the FDA's drug recall classifications based on the level of health risk. A Class 2 recall is for situations where using the drug might cause temporary health issues or where the probability of serious harm is remote. This is less severe than a Class 1 recall, where there's a reasonable probability of serious adverse health consequences or death. For instance, a medication that is subpotent but not dangerously so might trigger a Class 2 recall. Question 12. A pharmacy is going out of business and must dispose of its expired, unsaleable controlled substances. Which DEA form is required to document the destruction of these medications? A. DEA Form 222. B. DEA Form 106. C. DEA Form 41. D. DEA Form 224A. Answer: C. DEA Form 41. This question assesses knowledge of the correct DEA form for a specific action, the destruction of controlled substances. The DEA Form 41, known as the registrant's inventory of drugs surrendered, is used to document the disposal of controlled substances. This form is distinct from Form 106, for theft/loss, and Form 222, for ordering CIIs. Think of Form 41 as the official record-keeping document when controlled drugs are being permanently removed from inventory through proper destruction. Question 13. A patient brings in a new prescription for Accutane, isotretinoin. In addition to standard counseling, what specific FDA-mandated literature must be dispensed with this medication? A. A patient package insert, PPI. B. A medication guide, Med Guide. C. A copy of the drug's monograph. D. A letter of medical necessity. Answer: B. A medication guide, Med Guide. This question tests the difference between various types of patient information, focusing on a drug with significant risks like Accutane. The FDA requires that a medication guide be given to patients receiving drugs that pose a serious and significant public health concern. Isotretinoin is part of the iPledge REMS, Risk Evaluation and Mitigation Strategy, program due to its severe risk of birth defects, and a med guide is a critical part of ensuring the patient is fully informed. While PPIs are for drugs like oral contraceptives, med guides are for a broader category of high-risk medications. Question 14. A new community pharmacy is preparing to open. To legally dispense any controlled substances, the pharmacy must first register with the DEA using which form? A. DEA Form 224. B. DEA Form 222. C. DEA Form 41. D. DEA Form 106. Answer: A. DEA Form 224. This question focuses on the initial step a new pharmacy must take to handle controlled substances. The DEA Form 224 is the new application for registration, which is required for any entity, such as a retail pharmacy, hospital, or physician, that intends to dispense controlled substances. This registration must be renewed every 3 years using Form 224A. Essentially, Form 224 is the front door for getting DEA permission to be part of the controlled substance supply chain. Question 15. The pharmacist's refusal to fill a controlled substance prescription that they believe is not for a legitimate medical purpose is supported by which legal principle? A. The doctrine of preemption. B. The Kefauver-Harris Amendment. C. Corresponding responsibility. D. Stare decisis. Answer: C. Corresponding responsibility. This question examines the legal and ethical duty of a pharmacist when faced with a potentially illegitimate prescription, a concept known as corresponding responsibility. This principle holds that both the prescriber and the pharmacist are legally responsible for the proper prescribing and dispensing of controlled substances. Therefore, a pharmacist has a duty to question and, if necessary, refuse to fill any prescription that appears invalid or not issued for a legitimate medical purpose. It is a shared burden of ensuring these powerful medications are used safely and legally. Question 16. What is the primary role of a state's Board of Pharmacy, BOP? A. To set national drug pricing standards. B. To approve new drug applications from manufacturers. C. To regulate the practice of pharmacy within the state and protect public health. D. To enforce the Controlled Substances Act at the federal level. Answer: C. To regulate the practice of pharmacy within the state and protect public health. This question differentiates the duties of the State Board of Pharmacy from federal agencies. The BOP's primary role is to govern the practice of pharmacy at the state level, which includes issuing licenses to pharmacists and technicians, setting state-specific regulations, and taking disciplinary action. While the FDA approves new drugs and the DEA enforces federal controlled substance laws, the BOP is focused on the day-to-day operations and standards of pharmacies and personnel within its borders. Think of the BOP as the main protector of public safety regarding pharmacy services in your specific state. Question 17. A patient requests a partial filling of their prescription for the Schedule II drug Percocet because they cannot afford the full amount. If the pharmacy dispenses a partial quantity, the remaining portion must be filled within what time frame? A. 72 hours. B. 30 days. C. 60 days. D. 6 months. Answer: B. 30 days. This question tests the specific rules for partial filling a Schedule II prescription when requested by the patient or prescriber, a rule updated by the Comprehensive Addiction and Recovery Act, CARA. The key here is the reason for the partial fill is the patient's request, not the pharmacy being out of stock. In this scenario, the remaining quantity of the prescription may be filled within 30 days of the date the prescription was written. It's important not to confuse this with the 72-hour rule, which applies only when the pharmacy cannot supply the full quantity. Question 18. According to federal law, for how long must a pharmacy maintain prescription records from the date of their last dispensing? A. 1 year. B. 2 years. C. 5 years. D. 7 years. Answer: B. 2 years. This question asks for the minimum period required by federal law for keeping prescription records. Federal law mandates that pharmacies keep all original prescription records, for both controlled and non-controlled substances, for at least 2 years. It's crucial to know this is a federal minimum. Many states have stricter laws requiring longer retention periods, often 3, 5, or even 10 years. For any exam, always remember the 2-year federal baseline, but be aware that your state's law will always take precedence if it's more stringent. Question 19. The Orphan Drug Act of 1983 was passed to A. Require child-resistant packaging on all medications. B. Provide tax and marketing incentives for manufacturers to develop drugs for rare diseases. C. Establish a formal process for drug recalls. D. Allow for the emergency dispensing of medications without a written prescription. Answer: B. Provide tax and marketing incentives for manufacturers to develop drugs for rare diseases. The question focuses on the purpose of the Orphan Drug Act, which addresses a specific problem in drug development. This act provides financial incentives, like tax credits and extended market exclusivity, to encourage pharmaceutical companies to create treatments for rare diseases, those affecting fewer than 200,000 people in the U.S. Without these incentives, developing such orphan drugs would not be profitable for manufacturers due to the small patient population. This law helps ensure that patients with rare conditions are not left without hope for new therapies. Question 20. A pharmacist receives a phoned-in emergency prescription for a Schedule II controlled substance. Federal law requires the prescriber to provide a written, signed cover prescription to the pharmacy within how many days? A. 3 days. B. 7 days. C. 10 days. D. 30 days. Answer: B. 7 days. This question tests your knowledge of the strict requirements for an emergency oral prescription for a Schedule II drug. While a pharmacist can dispense a limited quantity based on a prescriber's verbal order in a true emergency, it must be followed up promptly. Federal law mandates that the prescriber must deliver a hard copy prescription, or an allowable electronic version, to the pharmacy within 7 days of the oral order. If this follow-up prescription is not received, the pharmacy is required to report the prescriber to the DEA. Question 21. Which of the following is an example of a drug that requires a patient package insert, PPI, to be dispensed with every new and refilled prescription? A. Lisinopril. B. Metformin. C. Conjugated estrogens. D. Atorvastatin. Answer: C. Conjugated estrogens. This question assesses your knowledge of medications that legally require a patient package insert, PPI, with every fill. The FDA mandates PPIs for a specific class of drugs, most notably oral contraceptives and estrogen-containing products. Of the options provided, conjugated estrogens fall into this category, and the PPI must be given to the patient each time the prescription is dispensed to inform them of the benefits and risks. Remember, this is a strict requirement for these specific drug classes, distinct from the broader MedGuide program. Question 22. The first U.S. law passed to protect the public from adulterated or mislabeled drugs and foods was the A. Controlled Substances Act of 1970. B. Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Act of 1938. C. Kefauver-Harris Amendment of 1962. D. Pure Food and Drug Act of 1906. Answer: D. Pure Food and Drug Act of 1906. This question is about the historical origins of drug regulation, specifically the first major federal law. The Pure Food and Drug Act of 1906 was landmark legislation that prohibited the interstate commerce of misbranded and adulterated foods, drinks, and drugs. While it didn't require drugs to be proven safe or effective, it was the foundational law that established the federal government's role in protecting consumer health from contaminated or falsely labeled products. Think of this act as the starting point for all modern food and drug regulation in the United States. Question 23. A pharmacy technician is processing a prescription for Xanax, alprazolam. What is the highest schedule this type of medication can be placed in at the federal level? A. Schedule 2. B. Schedule 3. C. Schedule 4. D. Schedule 5. Answer: C. Schedule 4. This question tests drug classification knowledge, focusing on a commonly known medication, Xanax, alprazolam. Benzodiazepines like alprazolam, diazepam, and lorazepam are classified as Schedule 4 controlled substances under federal law. These drugs have a recognized medical use but also a potential for abuse and dependence that is lower than Schedule 3 substances. Knowing the schedules of key drug classes, especially benzodiazepines and opioids, is essential for proper handling and dispensing. Question 24. Which of the following tasks related to a new prescription for a controlled substance can a pharmacy technician legally perform? A. Counsel the patient on potential side effects. B. Take a new prescription over the phone from a prescriber's office. C. Transfer the prescription to another pharmacy. D. Enter the prescription details into the computer system. Answer: D. Enter the prescription details into the computer system. This question differentiates the roles of a pharmacist and a pharmacy technician, focusing on which task is legally permissible for a technician. While specific state laws vary, a technician's role is generally technical and non-judgmental. Entering prescription data is a core technical task, but counseling, taking new verbal prescriptions for controlled substances, and transferring controlled substance prescriptions are all professional duties that must be performed by a licensed pharmacist. Always remember that any task requiring professional judgment is outside the technician's scope of practice. Question 25. The standards for non-sterile compounding are outlined in which of the following United States Pharmacopoeia, USP, chapters? A. USP less than 795. B. USP less than 797. C. USP less than 800. D. USP less than 825. Answer: A. USP less than 795. This question assesses your knowledge of USP chapters, focusing specifically on standards for non-sterile compounding. USP chapter less than 795 provides the guidelines and requirements for preparing compounded non-sterile preparations, such as creams, ointments, capsules, and suspensions. It is crucial to distinguish this from USP less than 797, which governs sterile compounding, like IVs, and USP less than 800, which deals with the safe handling of hazardous drugs. A simple way to remember is that 5 and less than 795 can be associated with the 5 senses, which relate to non-sterile products you can touch or taste.